My name is Detective Alex Morgan. For the past 12 years, I have worked in the Animal Crimes Division of the Metro Police Department. Most people do not realize such divisions exist, but animal abuse cases require specialized knowledge of both legal statutes and forensic techniques specific to animal victims. I chose this career path after responding to a brutal dogfighting ring as a rookie patrol officer. What I witnessed that day changed me forever. Animals cannot speak for themselves. They cannot testify about their abuse. They need advocates within the justice system. Our family decided to relocate last spring after my son Ethan was diagnosed with a progressive neuromuscular condition that affects his mobility and balance. At 10 years old, he was already struggling with daily activities most children take for granted. The doctors recommended a more accessible home environment and suggested a service animal might provide both physical assistance and emotional support. Our previous apartment building had strict no-pet policies, so we began searching for a suitable home in a neighborhood that would accommodate our new needs. Meadowbrook Estates seemed perfect when we first visited. Wide sidewalks lined streets of modern single-story homes with spacious yards. The community center featured an accessible pool and playground. My wife Sarah fell in love with the kitchen in the model home. Ethan was simply excited about finally having his own room with space for his growing collection of science books. The sales representative mentioned there was an active homeowners association, but assured us they were primarily focused on maintaining property values through reasonable community standards. The process of obtaining a service dog for Ethan took nearly 6 months. We worked with New Horizons Service Dog Training, a nonprofit organization specializing in mobility assistance animals. When we met Apollo for the first time, it felt like destiny. The golden retriever puppy, just 8 months old, had washed out of another program for being too gentle, but his temperament was perfect for Ethan's needs. He completed specialized training to help with balance support, item retrieval, and emergency alert responses. The transformation in Ethan was immediate and profound. Before Apollo, my son had become increasingly withdrawn and frustrated by his physical limitations. The first time Apollo helped him stand up from a fall without calling for assistance, I saw a spark return to Ethan's eyes. "Dad, did you see that? I did it myself," he exclaimed. Apollo wore his service vest proudly, seeming to understand the importance of his role. At night, he would curl protectively at the foot of Ethan's bed, alert to any sounds of distress. Our first official introduction to the Homeowners Association came 3 weeks after moving in. The monthly meeting was held in the community center conference room. About 20 residents attended, mostly older couples who had lived in the neighborhood since its development 5 years earlier. The HOA president introduced herself as Corinne Whitfield, a former real estate agent in her late 50s with perfectly styled blonde hair and a permanently fixed smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Welcome to our newest residents," Corinne announced, gesturing toward us. "We pride ourselves on maintaining the highest standards here at Meadowbrook. Our property values have increased 15% over the past 2 years because everyone follows the rules." As she spoke, her gaze lingered momentarily on Apollo, who lay quietly at Ethan's feet wearing his bright red service vest. Something in her expression gave me pause, but I dismissed it as typical HOA formality. After years investigating criminal cases, perhaps I was simply conditioned to look for trouble where none existed. The first direct confrontation happened on a Saturday morning as Ethan and I practiced walking exercises with Apollo in our front yard. Corinne appeared at the edge of our property, clipboard in hand, expensive sunglasses perched on her head. She did not bother with pleasantries. I need to inform you that Meadowbrook has strict pet policies, she stated, looking down at Apollo. Dogs must be kept in backyard enclosures or walked only in designated pet areas. Apollo is not a pet, I explained, gesturing to his service vest. He is a medically prescribed service animal for my son. Karen's lips tightened. Special accommodations require formal HOA approval through proper channels. I see no record of your application in our files. I kept my tone professional, the same voice I used when educating the public about animal welfare laws. The Americans with Disabilities Act specifically exempts service animals from housing restrictions. Service animals are not considered pets under federal law. Karen smiled thinly. Meadowbrook operates under covenant restrictions that supersede certain regulations. I will be sending you the proper paperwork to begin the exemption process. She turned and walked away before I could respond further. 3 days later, the first written warning appeared on our door. The official HOA violation notice cited unauthorized animal presence in common areas, with a potential fine of $150 per occurrence. I immediately called the HOA management company listed on our closing documents and emailed them copies of Apollo's service animal certification, along with ADA guidelines regarding housing protections. The representative assured me they would resolve the misunderstanding. Instead, a second violation notice arrived the following week, this one citing failure to maintain proper control of animal, with photographs attached showing Ethan and Apollo practicing balance exercises in our driveway. The images had clearly been taken with a telephoto lens from some distance. Sarah was disturbed when I showed her the pictures. "Alex, someone was photographing our son without permission," she said, her voice tight with concern. "That crosses a line." I drafted a formal letter explaining service animal laws, attached all relevant documentation, and sent copies to both Karen and the HOA management company via certified mail. The response came in the form of an emergency HOA board meeting, notice posted throughout the neighborhood, with the agenda item: discussion of enhanced pet restrictions and enforcement procedures. At the meeting, Karen stood before a PowerPoint presentation showing various dogs throughout the neighborhood, including several slides focusing specifically on Apollo. These unauthorized animals pose risks to property values and community standards, she explained to the assembled residents. Service animal claims are increasingly being used to circumvent reasonable restrictions. When I stood to address the legal protections in place, Karen cut me off. "We will take comments at the designated time," she said sharply. As she continued her presentation, she made pointed remarks while looking directly at our family. "Special needs should not mean special treatment that impacts the entire community," she declared. Several residents shifted uncomfortably, but a small group seated near Karen nodded in vigorous agreement. After the meeting, a woman named Diane Peterson approached us in the parking lot. She glanced nervously over her shoulder before speaking in a hushed tone. "You need to be careful with Karen," she warned. "3 years ago, my sister lived here with her emotional support cat. Karen made it her personal mission to drive them out. She organized neighbor complaints, tampered with my sister's mail, even filed false reports with animal control. Eventually, my sister could not take the harassment and moved." "Why would someone go to such lengths?" Sarah asked. Diane shook her head. "Karen views this neighborhood as her personal kingdom. Any perceived challenge to her authority becomes a vendetta. You are not the first family she has targeted, but the others gave in quickly. No one wants to cross her." The incidents escalated from there. Ethan began finding notes in his backpack after school. "Your dog does not belong here." Someone filed anonymous complaints with the city about barking, though Apollo was specifically trained not to bark except in emergency situations. Our trash cans were repeatedly overturned on collection day. Then came the morning I found dog feces smeared across our front door with a note reading, "Animals belong in kennels, not homes." The security camera we had installed captured only a hooded figure in the pre-dawn darkness. Ethan was devastated, asking through tears if we needed to find Apollo a new home to keep him safe. "Never," I assured him, kneeling to meet his eyes. "Apollo is part of our family. He is protected by law, and I protect both of you." What I did not tell my son was that I had begun documenting everything through my professional lens as an animal crimes officer. Each incident, photograph, and communication was carefully preserved with chain of custody protocols. Still, I hoped for resolution without escalation. I had seen too many neighborhood disputes spiral into violence in my line of work. The call came early Saturday morning. A significant animal hoarding case had been discovered across town, with over 50 cats and dogs needing immediate intervention. As the lead investigator for such cases in our jurisdiction, my presence was mandatory. The timing could not have been worse. Sarah had a previously scheduled medical appointment for her ongoing physical therapy following a car accident last year. We discussed canceling, but her doctor had emphasized the importance of maintaining the treatment schedule. "Mrs. Rodriguez next door can check in on Ethan and Apollo every half hour," Sarah suggested. Elena Rodriguez had become a close friend since our move, often bringing homemade cookies for Ethan and keeping him company when both Sarah and I needed to work. Her teenage daughter babysat occasionally and had been trained in basic emergency protocols for Ethan's condition. I hesitated, my instincts as both a parent and officer warring within me. "Are you certain that is enough supervision? I could request another officer take point on this case." Sarah placed her hand on my arm. "Alex, they will be fine for a few hours. Elena will check in frequently. Ethan knows how to reach us both. Apollo is always with him. You cannot neglect your responsibilities every time we have scheduling conflicts." With reluctance, I agreed to the arrangement. Before leaving, I checked our security system, confirmed all doors and windows were secure, and made sure the backyard gate was properly latched with the additional childproof lock we had installed. I knelt beside Ethan, who was reading on the couch with Apollo curled beside him. "Remember the rules while we are gone?" I asked. Ethan nodded seriously. "Stay inside unless Mrs. Rodriguez is with me. Keep Apollo in his service vest if we go outside. Call you or Mom immediately if anything feels wrong." The hoarding case was more severe than initially reported. Dozens of animals in various states of neglect filled a dilapidated house. The documentation and evidence collection process was meticulous and time-consuming. 3 hours into the operation, my phone vibrated with a call from Elena Rodriguez. Her voice was panicked. "Alex, I cannot find Apollo. I checked on Ethan 30 minutes ago and everything was fine. When I came back just now, the backyard gate was open and Apollo is gone. Ethan is beside himself." My blood ran cold. "What about the security lock on the gate?" "It has been tampered with," Elena replied. "The mechanism is broken." I immediately alerted my supervisor and headed for my car, already dialing Sarah to update her. When I arrived home 15 minutes later, neighbors had formed search parties, calling Apollo's name throughout the surrounding streets. Ethan sat in his wheelchair on our front porch, tears streaming down his face, clutching Apollo's spare leash. "I only let him out to go potty, Dad," Ethan sobbed. "He was right there and then he was not. I did not even take off his service vest." While reviewing our security footage, I caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure near our fence approximately 1 hour before Apollo disappeared. The image was too distant to identify conclusively, but someone had clearly interfered with our gate latch. As I organized the search efforts, my phone chimed with a text message from Jason Wheeler, who lived 2 doors down from Corinne Whitfield. "Corinne has your dog, backyard, hurry." I sprinted toward Corinne's house, still in my police uniform from the hoarding case. From the corner of my eye, I saw Ethan following in his wheelchair, having overheard the message. I yelled for him to stay back, but determination drove him forward faster than I had ever seen him move. The scene that greeted me would forever be burned into my memory. Corinne stood in her immaculate backyard beside a rented industrial wood chipper. Apollo, still wearing his service vest, was struggling in her grip as she dragged him toward the machine. The dog's normally friendly eyes were wide with terror. In that moment, my training took over. "Police, stop immediately," I shouted, my voice carrying the full authority of my position. Corinne turned, momentarily startled, but her expression quickly hardened into resolve. She yanked Apollo forward with surprising strength. I was running, calculating distances, knowing I would not reach them in time. "That is a service animal, release him now," I commanded, reaching for my phone to call for backup. "No unauthorized animals in Meadowbrook," Corinne stated coldly, as though reciting from the HOA handbook. With a final heave, she forced Apollo toward the chipper's intake. The sound that followed will haunt my nightmares forever. My scream came too late. The mechanical grinding followed by silence. I froze in horror as blood splattered across Corinne's pristine white fence and her gardening smock. Behind me came a sound more devastating than the machine, Ethan's anguished wail as he collapsed from his wheelchair onto the grass. He had witnessed everything. Corinne turned toward us, the wood chipper still running, an expression of satisfaction briefly crossing her face before she registered my uniform and the badge visible on my belt. "He was an unlicensed stray threatening my property," she stated with chilling calm. "I have the right to protect my home." I could not speak. Professional training and personal devastation warred within me. In 15 years investigating animal cruelty, I had never been the victim. I had never watched my child's beloved service animal murdered before my eyes. Neighbors began appearing, drawn by the commotion. Someone had called 911. Within minutes, patrol cars arrived, officers rushing toward the scene with hands on their weapons. I found myself being gently moved aside by Officer Jenkins, a colleague I had trained years earlier. "Alex, you cannot be part of this response," he said quietly, steering me toward Ethan, who lay sobbing on the grass. "We need to get your son medical attention." As I gathered my broken child into my arms, I watched the officers securing the scene, photographing evidence and reading Corinne her rights. The wood chipper was shut down and immediately tagged as evidence. Through professional eyes, I noted their procedures automatically, even as my heart shattered. My worlds had collided in the most horrific way imaginable. I was simultaneously a law enforcement officer and a devastated parent, watching a crime scene being processed around my son's murdered service animal. Blue and red emergency lights pulsed across the stunned faces of neighbors. Patrol officers established a perimeter with yellow crime scene tape, while evidence technicians photographed blood spatter patterns on the fence, grass, and wood chipper. Detective Marcus Chen, my colleague from Violent Crimes Division, had responded personally upon hearing my name on the dispatch call. He approached carefully, his expression a practiced mask of professional calm masking deep concern. "Alex, we need to get statements, but that can wait," he said quietly. "The ambulance is here for Ethan. Go with him. I will handle everything here." Ethan had not spoken since his initial cry. His body trembled violently against my chest as paramedics approached with a gurney. Behind us, I could hear Karen's voice rising indignantly as Officer Jenkins secured her in handcuffs. "This is outrageous. That dog was a neighborhood nuisance. I have documented every violation. Check my files inside. I was performing my duties as HOA president." The paramedic spoke softly to Ethan, checking his vital signs with gentle efficiency. "His blood pressure is concerning. We need to transport him now," the lead paramedic informed me. "Are you riding with us?" Sarah arrived just as we were loading Ethan into the ambulance, her face draining of color as neighbors quickly informed her what had happened. She climbed in beside us, gripping my hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Apollo," she whispered, though her eyes already held the knowledge. I shook my head, unable to form words. The ambulance doors closed, sealing us into a bubble of sterile efficiency as the paramedics continued monitoring Ethan's vital signs. My son stared blankly at the ceiling, tears flowing silently down his face. At the hospital, the emergency room doctor consulted with Ethan's neurologist about the potential physical impact of severe emotional trauma on his condition. A child psychologist was called in immediately. While medical professionals attended to Ethan, Detective Chen arrived to take my initial statement in a private consultation room. "I need you to walk me through everything, Alex," he said, recording device on the table between us. "I know this is impossibly difficult, but the more details we have now, the stronger the case will be." For nearly an hour, I recounted every interaction with Karen since moving to Meadowbrook. I provided names of witnesses, dates of harassment incidents, copies of HOA violation notices, and details about Apollo's service animal certification. Chen nodded grimly as I explained finding dog feces smeared on our door and the pattern of escalating hostility. "We obtained a search warrant for her home and electronic devices," Chen informed me. "The initial search revealed files with your name containing photographs of your family and dog, along with printed copies of HOA bylaws with handwritten modifications specifically targeting service animals. The rental agreement for the wood chipper was on her kitchen counter, dated 3 days ago." The child psychologist found us as we finished the interview. "Ethan is experiencing acute trauma," she explained. "He is not speaking but has begun clutching Apollo's service vest, which your neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez brought from your home. He refuses to release it. We recommend admitting him overnight for observation." When we returned to Ethan's room, he lay curled around Apollo's vest, his fingers tracing the service dog patches repeatedly. Sarah sat beside him, stroking his hair and singing softly, though her own eyes were red from crying. The sight broke something fundamental inside me. That evening, Detective Chen returned with Lieutenant Rodriguez from Internal Affairs. "Karen, Whitfield has been booked on multiple charges including aggravated animal cruelty, interference with a service animal, and potential hate crime enhancements related to disability discrimination," Chen explained. "But we need to discuss your involvement in the case." Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke carefully. "Detective Morgan, department regulations are clear about conflict of interest. You cannot be involved in any official capacity with this investigation. We will need to secure all evidence through proper channels to prevent any defense claims of impropriety." I understood the procedure perfectly but felt another layer of control slipping away. "Who is taking lead?" I asked. "I am," Chen confirmed, "and I promise you we will build an airtight case." When we returned home the following day with Ethan, who had still not spoken a word since the incident, we found our street transformed. On one side, dozens of neighbors had created an impromptu memorial with flowers, stuffed animals, and candles on our front lawn. Signs read "Justice for Apollo" and "Service Animals Save Lives." Across the street, a smaller but equally determined group had gathered on Karen's lawn. Their signs proclaimed "Property values matter" and "HOA rules exist for a reason." Several wore buttons matching the ones Karen often displayed at HOA meetings. Detective Chen had stationed a patrol car on our street to monitor the situation and prevent confrontations between the opposing groups. The officer nodded respectfully as we pulled into our driveway, helping shield Ethan from photographers from the local news station that had already picked up the story. That night, after finally getting Ethan to sleep with medication prescribed by his doctor, Sarah and I sat in stunned silence at our kitchen table. The house felt eerily quiet without Apollo's gentle presence. "What happens now?" Sarah finally asked, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "The legal process will take time," I replied, falling back on my professional knowledge as an anchor in the chaos. "Karen will be arraigned tomorrow. The prosecutor will likely pursue maximum charges given the circumstances." Sarah reached across the table for my hand. "Not with the case, Alex, with us, with Ethan. How do we move forward from this?" I had no answer. In my years investigating animal cruelty cases, I had counseled countless victims on the justice process, but never on how to heal from witnessing such deliberate malice directed at their family. For the first time, I found myself on the other side of a system I had navigated professionally for years, feeling utterly lost. Morning brought a team of investigators to our home. Though technically removed from the case, my colleagues treated me with the respect of both victim and fellow officer. Digital forensics specialists arrived to download footage from our security cameras, while evidence technicians collected samples from our tampered gate latch. Detective Chen sat with me at our kitchen table, not as a colleague, but as the lead investigator taking my victim's statement. "We executed search warrants on Karen's electronic devices last night," Chen informed me, his voice low to prevent Ethan from overhearing from the living room, where he sat silently watching educational television. "Her digital footprint includes extensive communications about your family." Chen opened a folder containing printouts of social media messages. Karen's private Facebook group with several HOA board members contained explicit threats. "One way or another, I am getting rid of that mutt this weekend." Email threads revealed she had secretly amended HOA bylaws without proper votes, specifically creating new restrictions that would make service animals nearly impossible to maintain in the community. "The prosecutor is particularly interested in her internet search history," Chen continued grimly. "Queries included how to get rid of neighbor's dog legally, and can wood chippers process animal remains. The premeditation is clear." Sarah gasped, her hand covering her mouth. She researched using the wood chipper. This was not some horrible impulse. Chen shook his head. "The rental agreement was made 3 days prior, coinciding with an HOA violation notice specifically targeting Apollo. We have recovered security footage from the rental company showing her specifically requesting a model with, quote, capacity for larger organic debris." The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Assistant District Attorney Mariah Washington stood on our porch, case files tucked under her arm. Though we had worked together on numerous animal cruelty prosecutions, this meeting marked our first interaction with me as the victim rather than expert witness. "Detective Morgan," she greeted me formally, then softened. "Alex, I came personally because of the complexity of this case and your position within the department. We settled in the dining room while Sarah brought coffee. Ada Washington spread documents across the table, methodically organizing her case files. The preliminary charges include aggravated animal cruelty, destruction of medical equipment, interference with a service animal, and hate crime enhancements due to targeting your son's disability, she explained. Given the evidence of premeditation, we are pursuing maximum penalties. She hesitated before continuing. There is also growing evidence that this was not an isolated incident. We have identified 3 former residents who left the neighborhood following systematic harassment regarding their pets or service animals. One family has come forward with evidence that their cat was poisoned after a dispute with Karen over garden decorations. While the investigation proceeded, Ethan's condition deteriorated further. The neurologist noted increased muscle weakness and coordination issues, likely exacerbated by the trauma and stress. The child psychologist diagnosed acute post-traumatic stress disorder alongside regression in his physical therapy progress. Night terrors began, with Ethan waking screaming, reaching for Apollo, who was no longer there to provide comfort and security. A week after the incident, Karen's preliminary hearing drew media attention from across the state. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when we arrived, many calling out questions about service animal rights and HOA authorities. Inside, the courtroom divided much like our neighborhood had, with supporters on both sides filling the gallery. Karen entered wearing a carefully selected conservative dress, flanked by an expensive defense attorney and several HOA board members wearing matching community standards buttons. She sat rigidly at the defense table, occasionally turning to nod at her supporters. The judge reviewed the charges before asking Karen to enter her plea. Her voice rang clearly through the courtroom. "Not guilty, Your Honor. I was enforcing our neighborhood covenant as is my duty and right as HOA president." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge frowned, peering over his glasses at Karen's attorney. "Counselor, I suggest you discuss the seriousness of these charges with your client. We will resume tomorrow morning for bail considerations." That evening, national news vans lined our street. The story had captured public attention, touching on issues of disability rights, service animal protections, and the limits of HOA authority. Sarah drew the blinds against the cameras while I helped Ethan with his evening routine, now painfully absent of Apollo's assistance. When Ethan finally fell asleep, I retreated to my home office and began drafting a document I had been contemplating for days. Drawing on 12 years of animal crimes investigation experience, I outlined specialized avenues of investigation that only someone with my background would know to pursue. Technical forensic procedures for analyzing blood evidence from the wood chipper. Specialized veterinary witnesses who could testify about Apollo's training and service animal status. Precedent cases establishing service animals as medical equipment under the law. By midnight, I had compiled 20 pages of detailed investigative guidance. Though regulations prevented me from actively participating in the case, nothing prohibited me from providing my expertise as a victim impact statement. I emailed the document to both Detective Chen and Ada Washington with the subject line, "Professional Insights from Animal Crimes Perspective." Washington called the next morning before court. "This is exactly what we needed, Alex. With your permission, I would like to bring in several of the expert witnesses you suggested. We cannot have you testify as an expert given your status as victim, but these specialists can establish the same facts without conflict of interest concerns." For the first time since the horrific incident, I felt a small measure of control returning. While I could not personally bring Karen to justice through my professional role, I could ensure the prosecution had every possible advantage my specialized knowledge could provide. Legal documents covered every surface of our dining room table. 3 months had passed since Apollo's death, and the prosecution's case against Karen Whitfield had expanded significantly. Ada Washington visited weekly, updating us on new developments and collecting additional information for the growing list of charges. The defense is attempting to frame her actions as overzealous but within HOA enforcement rights, Washington explained during one such meeting. They have filed motions arguing that covenant restrictions supersede certain Ada protections and that Karen was acting in her official capacity. I pushed aside a stack of papers, revealing notes from the Ada specialists Washington had brought into the case. The Americans with Disabilities Act explicitly states that service animals are not subject to pet restrictions or additional fees. No private housing covenant can override federal law. Washington nodded. Exactly. We have brought in 3 Ada compliance officers who will testify to this fact. The judge has already denied their motion to dismiss the interference with service animal charges. That was their strongest argument, and it failed spectacularly. The evidence timeline had expanded significantly since the initial investigation. Financial records revealed Karen had specifically rented the industrial wood chipper 3 days before the incident, coinciding exactly with her amended HOA complaint targeting Apollo. The rental company employee remembered her specifically requesting information about the machine's processing capacity for large organic material. Most damning were the recovered text messages between Karen and 2 HOA board members discussing plans to eliminate the service dog problem permanently and make an example that will discourage other special needs families from moving into Meadowbrook. These messages directly contradicted her public claims about mistaking Apollo for a stray dog. As the legal battle intensified, Ethan's recovery progressed in small, painful steps. The child psychologist recommended against having him testify in court, warning about the traumatic impact of revisiting the events in such a formal setting. Instead, they recorded a heart-wrenching statement about how Apollo had enabled Ethan's first steps without assistance in years, and how the service dog had been trained to retrieve medication during episodes of muscle weakness. The prosecution wants to use this video statement at trial, I explained to Sarah one evening after Ethan had gone to bed. The judge has conditionally approved it as victim impact testimony, provided Ethan's doctors confirm he cannot testify in person without significant psychological harm. Sarah rubbed her temples, the strain of recent months evident in the new lines around her eyes. Is it wrong that part of me is relieved he will not have to face her in that courtroom? No, I assured her. Protecting Ethan remains our priority through all of this. A revolution had been brewing within the HOA since details from the investigation became public. Residents horrified by Karen's actions organized emergency meetings to review and reverse her policy changes. During one particularly heated gathering at the community center, over 30 homeowners voted to dissolve the current board and establish an interim leadership committee until formal elections could be held. The most surprising development came when former HOA board member Michael Fitzgerald approached Detective Chen with additional evidence. Fitzgerald provided records of Karen's previous campaigns against residents, including forged violation notices, unauthorized property access, and evidence she had falsified meeting minutes to push through restrictive policies without proper votes. She told us it was all legal, Fitzgerald explained in his sworn statement. That as HOA president, she had the authority to act unilaterally in certain situations. When anyone questioned her, she would threaten to place liens on their property or report building code violations to the city. With trial approaching, Ada Washington assembled a formidable team of expert witnesses. Service animal trainers from New Horizons would testify about Apollo's specialized training and certification. Ada compliance officers would explain the legal protections afforded to service animals. Veterinary forensic specialists would present evidence about the brutality of Apollo's death. We have also subpoenaed records from 3 previous cases where Karen was investigated for animal complaints. Washington informed us during a pre-trial meeting. None resulted in charges, but the pattern of behavior will help establish motive and intent. The defense team responded with increasingly desperate motions. They attempted to suppress evidence from Karen's electronic devices, claiming improper search warrant procedures. When that failed, they filed for a change of venue, arguing media coverage had tainted the local jury pool. The judge denied both motions, setting a firm trial date for the following month. As final preparations for trial continued, I spent evenings at my desk reviewing case materials. Though officially removed from the investigation, I continued providing insights through carefully documented victim statements. Each recommendation I made was framed in the context of how Apollo's death had impacted our family, allowing me to share my professional expertise while respecting the boundaries established by department regulations. One evening, while organizing documents for Ada Washington's next visit, I discovered something I had overlooked in Karen's HOA communications. Buried in meeting minutes from 2 years earlier was a proposal she had submitted for a zero-tolerance pet policy that had been rejected by previous board members. Her notes in the margins revealed a long-standing obsession with eliminating all animals from the neighborhood. I immediately contacted Washington, who dispatched investigators to interview the former board members about this rejected proposal. Their testimonies provided crucial context about Karen's fixation on animals in Meadowbrook, estates long before our arrival. As trial approached, I realized this case had transformed from personal vengeance to something more profound. If successful, the prosecution would establish a legal precedent connecting HOA restrictions, disability rights violations, and animal cruelty in ways that could protect countless families in the future. The law had always been my tool for justice, but never had it felt so personally essential to see justice served through proper legal channels. The courthouse stood imposing against the clear blue sky on the first day of trial. After months of preliminary hearings, motions, and evidence gathering, the case of State v. Whitfield had finally reached the courtroom. Security was heightened due to public interest, with officers stationed throughout the building. Media trucks lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward. Inside, the gallery was packed with observers. Our supporters filled the benches behind the prosecution table, many wearing small golden retriever pins in Apollo's memory. Behind the defense sat a smaller group of Karen's HOA allies, their expressions defiant. Ada Washington delivered a powerful opening statement, methodically outlining the evidence of premeditation, cruelty, and calculated targeting of a disabled child's service animal. The jury listened intently as she described Apollo's specialized training and the devastating impact his loss had on Ethan's physical and emotional well-being. This case is not about neighborhood rules or property values, Washington concluded. It is about a deliberate act of cruelty designed to drive a disabled child and his family from their home by destroying a medically necessary service animal. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution built an overwhelming case. Witnesses included neighbors who had observed Karen photographing Apollo, the wood chipper rental agent who testified about her specific questions regarding the machine's capacity, and digital forensics experts who presented her damning search history and communications. The courtroom fell silent during the playing of Ethan's recorded testimony. His small voice described how Apollo had changed his life, helping him stand when he fell and bringing his medication during episodes of muscle weakness. "Apollo was my best friend," he concluded simply. "He helped me be brave." The defense strategy quickly unraveled. Karen's attorney attempted to frame her actions as overzealous enforcement of HOA regulations, but crumbled when confronted with evidence of her specific targeting of service animals. Their expert witness, an HOA legal consultant, was forced to concede under cross-examination that no homeowners association has authority to override federal disability protections. The pivotal moment came when Karen took the stand in her own defense. Initially composed and self-righteous, she maintained that she believed Apollo was an unauthorized stray threatening neighborhood safety. Washington's cross-examination systematically dismantled this claim, presenting photograph after photograph of Apollo clearly wearing his service vest during the incidents Karen had documented. When confronted with her own text messages discussing plans to eliminate the service dog problem permanently, Karen's facade began to crack. Her voice rose defensively as she insisted the HOA regulations superseded all other considerations.